panel, Organized. I guess we'll just introduce this topic of discussion. Obviously, it's been a tremendous 12 months in the Bitcoin ecosystem. I think that with the advent of ordinals and the Taproot upgrade a couple years ago, it's created a pretty interesting watershed moment for the builder community. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been pouring in from the venture community. There's many different L2s coming in addressing scalability and programmability concerns in the Bitcoin space. So with that, we'll start off this panel. And why don't each of you take a minute to introduce yourself and your project, and then we'll jump in.
Cool, thanks. So I already gave introduction of myself, but yeah, as I said, I joined Zetachain. Zetachain, we're a blockchain, L1 EVM compatible blockchain focused on interoperability, so you can deploy applications in our L1s that they can natively interact with different connected blockchains, and including Bitcoin, for example. So you can call smart contract from Bitcoin and send assets into Bitcoin. Yeah, that's high level view on Zetachain.
Thanks, Lucas. Hey everyone, Mikhil here. I'm the co-founder of pStake. Like I said, we do liquid staking. We've been doing liquid staking before. It was a cool thing before Lido came out. But we chose an asset that not many people here care about. It was Atom that we were doing liquid staking for. The Cosmos ecosystem never picked up, but we learned a bunch of things about liquid staking, about staking. And we were very early into staking. 2019, there were like 2 PS chains at the time. So yeah, I've had a journey around staking, liquid staking for the longest time. Got very excited when we learned that there's somebody building Bitcoin staking, and that seemed like a unique and very interesting opportunity. So for us, it just made a lot of sense to start working on liquid staking within the Bitcoin ecosystem. So very happy to be here, and thanks for staying back. I know it's the time when everybody feels very sleepy, so thanks for sticking around.
All right, it's Sunny. All right, I need to talk like a rapper then, I guess. Ecosystem at Merlin Chain. Merlin Chain is a Bitcoin layer 2 that is EVM compatible. We've been live since February and been one of the most established chain, Bitcoin L2 at the moment, with mainnet up and TVL being top 10 in terms of like most of the chains. So happy to be here. Thanks for sticking around. It's been tiring as well for us, and yeah, hope to have a good conversation with everyone here.
Hello everyone, I'm Orkun. I'm co-founder of Citrea, Bitcoin's first ZK rollup that we have been building for around a year, and recently launched our DevNet, which is fully EVM compatible, as we are building Type 2 ZK EVM working on Bitcoin.
Thank you. I'm Zack. I'm director of Marketing Botanix Labs. We're building the Spider chain, which is a layer 2 on Bitcoin. Basically, we pioneered sort of the EVM equivalence layer 2 Bitcoin narrative starting back in late 2022. Our white paper was published early 23. Testnet's been live and is still currently live since November, and our mainnet is scheduled to go live later this quarter. Yeah, basically our goal, I think shared by a bunch of other panelists, is to make Bitcoin useful and fun and interesting and attractive for all types of developers and users across the rest of the crypto ecosystem. It's kind of lost its position in crypto, even though it's still sort of the biggest and by market cap and brand recognition and whatever, blockchain and cryptocurrency. And we want to put it back at the table for DeFi too.
Great, thanks. So obviously the name of this panel is in part BTCfi. So what is BTCfi to you guys? We have $1 trillion worth of addressable market. There's obviously not much of a developed DeFi ecosystem within Bitcoin yet. So how do you define the state of the market today, and how do you see it playing out over the next year?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think answering that question, you kind of have to step back and ask yourself, like, what is Bitcoin itself? Right now, Bitcoin is just kind of there, right? Like you talk about people who are using DeFi and building stuff in DeFi. And everyone knows Bitcoin, most everyone loves Bitcoin, but it's just kind of there to hold and see at the top of CoinGecko, and that's kind of it. But Bitcoin's original mission is kind of twofold: to separate money and state, sort of like a very ideological directive, and it was also supposed to be the internet of money. Those are very broad, sweeping mandates for this kind of new thing that we call cryptocurrency and blockchains that, kind of a decade and a half we've been trying to figure out what they're good for. And Bitcoin has not really lived up to its potential over that short period. Now, yes, Bitcoin and the rest of crypto is still very young. We have a lot of time to build and experiment and try new things. But we answer the question like, what is BTCfi? The goal of that, in large part, is to fulfill the mission of Bitcoin, which is to create a radically permissionless, decentralized global financial system. And Bitcoin, honestly, has a little bit of catching up to do in fulfilling that mandate. We want to play a key part in helping it do that.
Yeah, today market cap-wise, I think Bitcoin is just half of the market, and activity-wise, it is much less. And if we want to make Bitcoin full global money or unit of account rather than just store of value, we need to have all these use cases around with all the other smart contract chains and currencies in Bitcoin. And while doing that, we don't need to change Bitcoin that much. We can just onboard this high-loss stuff to L2s and then enable BTCfi on the L2s while keeping L1 safe and secure and decentralized. I think BTCfi is just the sum of everything that you should and you can do with your Bitcoin, including Bitcoin-backed stablecoins, including money markets, not fiat-backed coins like Reflexer kind of stuff. I think it should all build on Bitcoin and be enabled by BTC as the asset.
I think both of those kind of summarize the whole landscape. I do believe that most of us do have a similar approach with whatever BTCfi is eventually enabling Bitcoin to be used in multiple different ways rather than how it's being used right now on the layer 1 itself. So that's the most common approach is right now is having a EVM layer on top of it, to inherit the ecosystem that Ethereum builders or EVM builders have already had for the past 5-6 years, and then, having that on top of Bitcoin to, first we have the basement laid out, and then we can try out different things that Bitcoin, as a special asset, it has a special image, and how we can use that to its fullest potential.
Well, I think I share very similar views as well. For me, I'm in a very unique position because everybody around me here is building a chain. For us, we don't have a chain. We have an application. It's very simple. We can work with all the different chains that exist. For me, BTCfi is all about having utility to Bitcoin so that it can be used in all of these different chains. How can we have Bitcoin generate yield so that it's a more active asset? It's an asset you want to use for something. So far, it's all been about storing, it's been a store of value, right? It's like gold. You want to keep it in your wallet, not touch it, not do anything with it, but why if you can do a lot more with it, right? So for me, BTCfi is all about creating that yield layer on top of Bitcoin, making sure you want to use it for different purposes, and it's not about Bitcoin L2s. Personally, obviously, I love every single L2 here. We've been speaking to all of them, but for me, the most important thing is BTC as an asset should be on every single chain, whether it's Ethereum, Solana, or Tong. It does not matter whether you're a Bitcoin L2 or not, because at some point, every chain is potentially going to be a Bitcoin L2. So for me, BTCfi is about the yield aspect of Bitcoin and the ability to make Bitcoin an asset that is used everywhere.
Yeah, so I think we had good overview over what BTCfi is. I would add that over time, we've seen, I think, very big shift in the mindset of what Bitcoin should be. If you take the early stages, the main debate was if Bitcoin should be store value or can be used as a payment solution. That was the reason you see Vitalik created a new chain, Ethereum chain for smart contracts. Because originally he wanted to build on Ethereum, but then the Bitcoin community was very against bringing smart contracts into Bitcoin because it was not in the original vision of a project. Then over the years, I think we've seen more and more openness into bridging Bitcoin into DeFi and bringing more utility to Bitcoin. We've seen in the last year a very big step with ordinals, the idea of having a non-fungible token on Bitcoin, and also runes after that. And so no, I think for the future of DeFi, I think there is still like core values for Bitcoin that you're gonna still have in the chains. Like if I want to give an example, Bitcoin is likely to stay proof of stake. The model like for the state is likely to stay like using the UTXO models. So there is some aspects of projects where I think there will be some roof in bringing more utility to Bitcoin, and what I see in the future is more and more developments on the L2s, building on top of Bitcoin, and yeah, that's the main future I see, like some core values staying in Bitcoin, but more development on top of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin keeping its original vision in decentralization and everything related to this.
So each of your projects focus on different aspects of scaling Bitcoin, and I think with the emergence of hundreds of L2s and various protocols that try to adapt to this newfound interest in the developer community, it can get quite confusing for the retail user when it comes with these buzzwords and design choices that each of your projects has made. So I want each of you to start by briefly explaining the unique approach that your project takes on addressing Bitcoin scalability.
Sure. So in our case, Zetachain, we are not uniquely building for Bitcoin. We are building blockchain interoperable that will connect to any chains. So hence the branding universal blockchains. The idea is we are L1, so we're not building on Bitcoin, and we have a concept of observer signers. We will observe and sign transaction into and from external blockchains. So this system is integrated into our proof of stake blockchain, so the entire system stays decentralized. And so we connect to Ethereum through this system, but also Bitcoin, so we can observe transaction from Bitcoin blockchain. You can interact from Bitcoin to Zetachain and use this signer system to sign transaction into Bitcoin.
Yeah, for us, I mean, just saying something? No. Yeah, so Bitcoin scaling is, you can view it in two different ways. One is scaling the network, which is mostly around smart contracting capabilities, bringing layer 2 solutions on top of Bitcoin, the network, and the other is scaling the asset itself, Bitcoin as an asset. So like I mentioned, Bitcoin as an asset has not been utilized for a bunch of things. It's just been a store of value. What we are doing is bringing liquid staking into the foray. So we're building on top of Babylon. Babylon is a Bitcoin staking protocol. What they allow you to do is, so far, like Bitcoin is a proof of work chain. There is no concept of staking so far for a proof of work chain, right? We haven't heard of it. But now with Bitcoin staking, what you essentially do is instead of staking Bitcoin to secure the Bitcoin network, you use Bitcoin, stake it to secure some other chains that need additional economic security. So not going too much into the complexities of economic security, it essentially makes sure your blockchain is more robust and it cannot be attacked from an economic perspective. So nobody can acquire a bunch of tokens from the market and pull out some assets from the chain. That's primarily what economic security allows you to do. With Bitcoin staking, you can earn staking rewards in the form of various other tokens, not Bitcoin, just a bunch of other coins. What we allow you to do is to take away the complexities of staking, because staking has not been capital efficient. We've all seen that with Lido in the Ethereum ecosystem. Lido did a phenomenal job. Liquid staking has had product market fit, and it's very evident. So staking has a bunch of inefficiencies, which is your assets are locked up, you can't use it for any other purpose. How do we solve that with liquid staking? We accept BTC deposits, we stake it across multiple finality providers on Babylon, which secure a bunch of different chains. The good thing is Babylon's go-to-market is Cosmos. They've gone after the Cosmos ecosystem. I've always been a skeptic around EigenLayer. I've been very vocal about this. I don't think EigenLayer succeeds because they don't have a good go-to-market, and if you have $20 billion of TVL, you can't generate like enough yields to give out to these E3 stakers. With Bitcoin, there's been no yields at all. There is no yield on Bitcoin. Any like 2-3% yield is a phenomenal number for BTC staking. The fact that Babylon goes after Cosmos chains, which have some staking and inflation, plugged into it, makes it a very attractive opportunity. So the fact that we've been building in Cosmos for the longest time and have a very deep understanding of the Cosmos tech stack, valuation, and how these chains work gives us an edge. So that's what is unique to us. It's the experience. It's the fact that we've been doing liquid staking, and pretty much every liquid staking protocol out there is the same. I would say it's about go-to-market. It's about how you wanna build your solution. So for us, it's about the go-to-market. It's about risk and how we mitigate certain risks. So yeah, that's what makes us unique.
Right. From Merlin chain, our scaling solution, our narrative or approach through it is more of a, let's call it a mix of what we are used to in the EVM world plus Bitcoin. So the team itself has been building in Bitcoin for quite a while now. After ordinals came out, the team started doing a lot of different experiments with ordinals, and eventually they found out like, okay, the chain itself has its own limits of what the technical the technical design can handle. And so one of the easiest ways at that time, and the final approach that we did have, was build an EVM chain on top of it, and then we have the finality ZK running through ZK proofs and then inscribing it onto Bitcoin itself. So that was like the whole idea. I'm not going to dive deep into that, but that's the idea of giving all of these Bitcoin assets a utility and an extra layer application through this EVM layer that we call Merlin chain right now. And so I would have to say, like, with all of the mature devs resources in the EVM pool, we are able to provide a lot of new applications, new dApps to what is happening on Merlin chain. So that is our approach. I would say, hopefully I'm not like representing anyone else than me, but I would say this is a very common approach, and we are the first one to have it onto market and had big success with it.
Yeah, in the current market, I think there are more than 50 Bitcoin L2s or whatever, but most of them are just like scams trying to like get people's money and like get yield on top of them, and or just use their money on somewhere else on some custodian. So there's some informative web pages like Bitcoin layers, etc. Then you can visit those web pages and get more information about which layer you should use or like which layers you should be careful about. From our technology-wise, we are always engineering and security first. We haven't launched the testnet or mainnet yet. That's because we want to build a real ZK rollup on Bitcoin with working ZK proofs plus a fraud proof for verification. So our goal is always introduce this ZK EVM on Bitcoin that can work in the most trust minimized way possible today on Bitcoin. And if there's some product market fit and use case on top of that ZK rollup, then people can acknowledge that this is something important that we should bring into Bitcoin in a trustless manner. And then they can upgrade Bitcoin with CAT or whatever ZK verification script that's proposed in that day. And there will be afterwards there will be a trustless ZK rollup running on Bitcoin that you can build anything you want without limitations of the L1. What we are building is not billion TPS scalable or whatever. It is still limited by the Bitcoin SDA capabilities and stuff, but our goal is to have the most trust minimized version and the most secure version running on Bitcoin, and then we will focus on the scalability aspect to enable more use cases for more developers and users.
I hope there's not a test after this on all these scaling solutions. But our solution is quite simple. Scaling Bitcoin in general is kind of a tricky problem to address, because even though they don't have users, there are lots of teams that have been trying to scale Bitcoin in creative ways for well over a decade, but nobody really cares about it. So our approach is kind of to look at what other people are doing successfully in crypto and figure out a way to bring that and deploy it on Bitcoin. So The spider chain has two core components, basically. A layer of decentralized multisigs, where the coins are stored sort of when they're moved up from the base layer. And then we fork the Rust ETH implementation and deploy that EVM software layer on Bitcoin. So in effect, like within minutes, any application that runs on Ethereum or one of its layers can be copy-pasted to run on Bitcoin. Gas is paid in Bitcoin. It all runs natively on Bitcoin. For a long time, these teams that have tried to scale Bitcoin have tried to create new VMs and aren't really paying attention to what the market is using or what is sort of ubiquitously adopted across the rest of crypto. We think that's the EVM, and we think bringing the EVM to Bitcoin is going to be a winning solution. We think, like, if you open Uniswap and you can trade on things running on Bitcoin, or like with MetaMask, if you see not wrapped Bitcoin, but actually native Bitcoin in your MetaMask, that's sort of the power that this unlocks. So like I mentioned, we've been sort of tinkering around with this since 2022. White paper and testnet have been live for the past couple of years, and our team is sort of deeply rooted in the Bitcoin and Ethereum side of things, which I think gives us a unique perspective on how to win sort of the scaling project for Bitcoin. I've personally been in Bitcoin since 2014. Our CTO has been in Bitcoin before that. He actually co-authored the Bitcoin improvement proposal around OpCat, sort of to update the Bitcoin network. And we think our talent, our vision, but most importantly, just things that the market already uses will sort of unlock the full potential of Bitcoin and all this capital and these potential users that are kind of just not there right now. The capital's sitting there dormant, the users are elsewhere in crypto, and bringing things they're familiar with from a user and dev side, the EVM, to Bitcoin really can be a game changer.
Yeah, very good. So I mean, if anybody here has traded a Runes token in the last few months, I think that user experience, developer experience, it's quite, there's a lot to be desired there. And to your earlier point, there's been several teams trying to address this programmability or scalability issue for several years now and have been unsuccessful in doing so. So how is your team specifically trying to attack enhancing the user experience and developer onboarding experience for scaling Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think, so touching on what I was just saying a minute ago, I think just from a developer and user perspective, like those are sort of the two sides of this market. Like there's kind of no debate that everyone is familiar with the EVM from all sorts of dApps and deployment toolkits and everything. But building on Bitcoin itself is very hard. And it's a very weird and kind of unfortunate situation for Bitcoin to be in, where it's obviously the biggest, oldest, in some ways, probably, I would at least argue, the best blockchain in crypto. But the ratio of talented Bitcoin developers versus non-Bitcoin developers in crypto is at least 1 to 1,000. And like, so if we have the best blockchain but nobody knows how to build on it, then sort of what's the point? So our point is to take a software layer that all these developers are familiar with, the EVM, and sort of copy-paste that onto Bitcoin. So all the cool dApps they're building outside of Bitcoin can also be copy-pasted and run natively on Bitcoin. And if we expand sort of the DeFi landscape in that way, like very easily, very simply, but with massive potential to sort of 10x, 100x Bitcoin's user base, developer base, and general market share, inside crypto and outside of crypto.
I think Bitcoin native assets a bit tricky because they're kind of like, it was a solution that's proposed even before all these upgrades and other stuff like ordinals, like colored coins and such, but they become quite popular because people want to do something with their BTC and they want them to like be as secure as Bitcoin. So all of these tokens are as secure as Bitcoin, but they are just indexed off chain. And the idea is, while you are scaling that user experience and the developer experience, you should keep them as secure as Bitcoin also. So I think EVM compatibility, I definitely agree. There's no need to like reinvent the wheel or like try to build something with Bitcoin's limitations. As long as you can build something that's as secure as Bitcoin, then that should be fine for developers to just like build their applications on that EVM layer, and they can use Bitcoin native assets with or without bridging from the L1. They can simply land from L1 using DLCs and other stuff. So you don't even need to have this kind of bridging experience. So you can just atomic swap to Bitcoin and then enjoy your Bitcoin on the L2. So there are many possibilities that you can build, but you don't need to forget about the product market fit of Runes and BRC20s, which is essentially using Bitcoin as the unit of account and having Bitcoin security.
Right, I think the experience of building on Bitcoin, from a Merlin standpoint, we've been we've been live on mainnet for a while, and so we've also been through the runes hype, and then a lot of runes. I think Merlin chain was actually the biggest trading platform for runes at one point when the token airdrop happened, and so what it is like basically most of the Bitcoin builders, what they build when the ordinals just happened was they tried to have an account that is essentially a black box, like a centralized exchange somehow, to have all the trading happen and then have the results settle back on the chain itself, to have that result back to the chain itself, right? I would say most of the layer 2s, at least for Merlin chain, is we have that onto a more application layer, an EVM layer that we have, and then we have all of the tokens, all of the assets back into that, onto that chain, and our goal is trying to make that whole process as transparent as possible. So we have ZK provers, we inscribe it onto the main chain itself. All of the informations are open and public, and so users can feel safe, trading on this platform and know that they can withdraw all of the assets out of, this application there once they are, they're fine with holding the bag for like an extra few months or something, and then if they want to trade again, get back to it, and then so it's basically expanding what the Bitcoin can do with all of the experience, user experience experiments that Ethereum, like the Ethereum community has been built for us, and even like Solana community has been built, like all of the infrastructure, all of the effort building on top of the EVM ecosystem can be, bring into the Bitcoin ecosystem through this application layer. So that's how we do it.
For us, there's no concept of developer experience because we're a dApp, so we are one of the people that these guys here are talking about. I think what's very, and I have views, maybe incorrect, but my view is that EVM is the shittiest language to work with, honestly. We've seen it for so long. Unfortunately, it's the one that has the most hype, and a lot of developers, that's where all the liquidity is. So unfortunately, we have to build on the EVM. But I think I like the fact that Arch Network is doing SVM. It makes a big difference because Rust is a much stronger programming language to work with. So for us as developers, we would like to see a lot more of these layer 2s that come out with different programming languages, not just EVM. But obviously, we still have to work with EVM because that's where most of the liquidity is. But again, from our perspective, we care about user experience. It's all about users for us. We want to make sure that as a user, all you have to do is deposit a Bitcoin, and we take care of the rest. So what happens with where that Bitcoin is staked, it should all be on-chain first and foremost. We want to make sure that you can see what your Bitcoin is doing and where it is, what's happening with your Bitcoin. There's no way you do not get visibility on what's happening with your Bitcoin. We find reliable yield sources, like obviously Bitcoin staking through Babylon is a big yield source. What happens other than that? So finding sources like a lot of these layer 2s today or side chains in the Bitcoin ecosystem have started with this concept of BTC staking as well, where you can stake Bitcoin to secure these chains themselves and earn some staking rewards in the form of these chain tokens. So also putting that Bitcoin to use on these different chains. So that's kind of how we think about it. For the end user, it's just one click. Deposit your BTC, get a yield-bearing Bitcoin token, which we call YBTC. It's the LST. Use this LST wherever you want, but obviously that's going to create complexities because then you have to take this YBTC to different chains. There's so many of these chains. How do you do it? Every layer 2 today is a side chain. It comes with a trust assumption. There's bridges that operate with MPCs, multisigs. So for us, what matters is to make sure that the user's funds are safe. I don't say that we don't have an MPC. By the way, we use MPC wallets as well because there's no way to have smart contracting capability on the Bitcoin network today. So when users deposit their Bitcoin into pStake, they deposit it into an MPC wallet, but the staking happens through that wallet. The BTC does not leave that wallet. But where we issue the YBTC token is unfortunately on the Ethereum L1 today. Hopefully that changes to much more than just ETH L1, and it goes to Solana, it goes to other BTC L2s, but that's where the user experience starts taking a hit. What we want to also do is create vault-based solutions where you can just deposit BTC, get YBTC, deposit that YBTC back into pStake, and pStake runs different strategies for you to earn more yield. So user experience is what we care about. We want to make sure it's one click, maximum 2 clicks for the user, and that's it. You earn multiple yields from different sources.
Okay. So it seems like there is some sort of consensus on the idea that DevX on Bitcoin is very complicated, and I think it's likely to stay the case given the architectural choices on the Bitcoin blockchains related to the core values of Bitcoin. So I was mentioning just before the UTXO model for state management of Bitcoin. It's something that is very not adapted if you want to build a smart contract platform. It's unlikely to change in the future, and so the developer experience in general is unlikely to become as good on Bitcoin as you have on a chain that is natively designed for smart contracts. So given that most of the optimal user experience will happen like on L2 solutions, blockchains that connect directly to Bitcoin. In our case, we are also in the idea that the EVM is the best choice because it's where you have the biggest developer user base, also the best tooling. So that's why we adapted our blockchains to be EVM compatible and being mainly used to build applications developed in Solidity. So yeah, on the DevX side, building on L2's blockchain connected to Bitcoins. Now, if you take the user experience in many contexts, the user experience is also bad. If you use bridges or different solutions like that, if you take Ethereum, for example, you need to use wrapped BTC, which remove a bit like the idea of Bitcoin directly using Bitcoin or Bitcoin chain. So in our case, we decided to give the opportunity for Bitcoin users to directly interact with the chain from Bitcoin, so that you can reuse the wallets you're using on Bitcoin, interacting over the chain. So yeah, in our Zetachain, for example, if you want to make a smart contract call using BTC, you will send on Bitcoin directly BTC to a gateway with a memo that will contain the smart contract call. Then you can, for example, interact with DeFi protocols and Bitcoins, log Bitcoin for some specific purposes. You want to unlock your Bitcoin, you can also send message directly from Bitcoin. So you can do all the interactions from Bitcoin, which I think gives a better user experience given that you will directly use the Bitcoin chain, but at the same time a better developer experience building on a chain that has been designed for actually building smart contracts.
Very good. So interoperability is definitely becoming more increasingly important, we'll say, right? You have all these L2s, meta protocols. We've seen this play out in the modularity of Ethereum where you have all this fragmented liquidity. So what efforts are your teams making to make more connectivity between interoperability between other chains, whether it's a completely separate ecosystem or other Bitcoin layer 2s?
Yeah. Our vision with Zetachain is to enable chain abstraction, the idea that you can interact with DeFi protocol without thinking about which chain you need to interact with. So for this, we're building a framework that we call the chain abstraction framework that lets developers building DeFi applications in one place on Zetachain, and where from any chain you can interact with these protocols. So you can, for example, build a decentralized exchange that you will be able to interact with, use from Bitcoin, but also from Ethereum in the same way. So yeah, chain abstraction, that's the main idea, or main way to address connecting the different ecosystems. So the overall idea is to just remove the aspects of different chains, the idea of having different ecosystems, just having global platforms where you can interact with any DeFi protocols.
I think, like I said, we don't have a chain. So for us, we issue YBTC, which is yield-bearing LST on the Ethereum mainnet. And from there on, we take it to multiple chains. So for us, we're going to work with different bridges, layer 0 being one of them, is one of the solutions that we're going to use to take the BTC LST into multiple places. But unfortunately, we don't have an IBC equivalent for the entire crypto ecosystem, which would have been a phenomenal thing to have. But for us, it's about taking the YBTC token to multiple chains, but do that with as little complexity as possible for the user. So use a common bridging solution across multiple chains and see how that goes. So yeah, that's about our interoperability.
Merlin chain actually has a similar approach to what pStake is doing. Even though we are a chain, we do have this one, a few assets, MBTC and Solve BTC, working with Solve Protocol, to have these assets on other chains, to expand the adoption of these assets, and also part of it is taking care of our users as well, because they've joined us with 22,000 Bitcoin, and most of them through Solve BTC. I think they have like 18,000 Bitcoin, to other chains. It's also benefiting our users, also creating a TVL friendly environment for a lot of other chains. And so with that said, we also leverage existing solutions like Layer 0 to have that secure, have like a, let's say, well-trusted third party to help us to do that expansion and interoperability. On ourselves, I think most of the chains still rely on different types of bridges, but I think that'll be a conversation for like the bridge folks to discuss out. And so right now we just leverage their existing technology and to have it, have these assets to move around inside of the ecosystem, even into like Arbitrum and Ethereum.
Yeah, I think if you are building a true Bitcoin L2, it should naturally be connectable to all the other Bitcoin L2s, as you have some kind of data root, state root, or proof or whatever on Bitcoin L1. So they can easily communicate using that data asynchronously. For synchronous composability, you can have shared sequencing among multiple rollups that's built on Citrea, so that they can almost an L3 on Bitcoin. But they're L2 on Citrea, and they can customize their execution environment, they can customize their data availability layers, but they can still interpret using this shared sequencing layer. But other than that, you obviously have channels and atomic swaps that you can use Lightning as kind of connector between different L2s that lives on the Bitcoin L1.
Yeah, I think the fragmented liquidity question is an interesting and kind of tricky one. I think it's one that the Ethereum and sort of the rest of non-Bitcoin DeFi should definitely and is focusing on more than Bitcoin. I think for Bitcoin right now, that's sort of not the most pressing question. We'll kind of get to that point. The only thing that's worse than fragmented liquidity is dormant liquidity, and that's Bitcoin right now. Like, nobody's using it. So let's kind of like create a fragmented liquidity problem. That'll be better than what we have now, because Bitcoin just sits there while everything else happens outside of Bitcoin. If we can activate these coins and fragment them, like that would be a huge improvement over the status quo. So yeah, maybe we'll have this conversation again in like a year or 2 or 3 or something, and we'll be like, yeah, maybe Bitcoin should kind of fix this liquidity fragmentation problem, but that's not the problem right now. The problem is dormancy, and that's kind of what we're trying to fix.
No, great point, great point. Okay, so we're rounding out the end of the panel. So what we'll do is each of you can, if you want, you can give a roadmap update or something exciting that each of you want to share with the community, or maybe a spicy hot take for the market.
Oh boy, yeah. So updates for us, I guess, like I said earlier on the panel, our mainnet is scheduled to go live later this quarter. You can follow any of our team or the company itself on all sorts of social platforms for updates. Excited about that. I guess hot takes. So something was mentioned on the panel a little bit ago was kind of, is the EVM good, is the EVM bad, and we're sort of all about building the EVM on Bitcoin. And I definitely think like there are a lot of great points for why the EVM's kind of shitty. But our philosophy is like it's never a winning position to tell the market what to do. It's always the winning position to listen to what the market is telling you. And we view sort of these virtual machines, it's basically a software battle. So if we, like, Windows is pretty shitty, but they sort of won the software battle. because of distribution. The market loves Windows. Our market also loves the EVM. So if we want to build, which is the mistake that basically every Bitcoin scaling team in history has made, they've tried to basically rebuild some sort of virtual machine on Bitcoin that the market just doesn't care about. So our philosophy is listen to the market, take what the market is using, and bring it back to Bitcoin. Everyone's familiar with Solana DeFi. Everyone's familiar with Ethereum and all of its layers and DeFi on them. Let's have Bitcoin have a seat at that table also, and take what the rest of the market is using, the Ethereum virtual machine, and make it compatible on Bitcoin, which is what we're doing. And the fruit of that will be, I don't think anyone's bullish enough, I guess, is the best way to put that. So, yeah.
I'll quickly ask a quick follow-up since we have a little bit of time, and I don't know who's after this panel. But so you mentioned like listening to the market. The proof is in the consensus that people vote with their money, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, devil's advocate here is obviously wrap BTC has been something available to the market for several years now,
yeah.
right? Effectively, that is the equivalent of bridging your Bitcoin to EVM compatible chain. But to date, there's been probably about 1% of the total market cap of Bitcoin to wrap BTC. So how do you envision that changing the minds of the Bitcoin holders who actually historically have not really wanted to do that?
Yeah. No, wrap BTC is kind of the perfect case study of the market and how it feels about Bitcoin and DeFi. BitGo created Wrap Bitcoin because people wanted to use their Bitcoin for stuff, but the kind of like this community takeover of Bitcoin over the past 5 to 7 years has prevented this culture of building cool stuff and experimenting and doing all the stuff we see in DeFi outside of Bitcoin. So eventually, BitGo and the rest of the market were like, we'll just give you all of our Bitcoin, you issue us a token, and we can take this representation of Bitcoin and use it elsewhere, because nobody's going to build this stuff on Bitcoin, at least anytime soon. So it's kind of like a desperation play. Like, let us use our Bitcoin for something, and we don't, BitGo's a great team, Wrap Bitcoin's a great product, but we are sort of decentralization maxis. Wrap Bitcoin is obviously highly centralized. So if we can kind of recreate that DeFi ecosystem, or expand it, not recreate, but expand it to Bitcoin, then I think the use case for Wrap Bitcoin kind of diminishes quite significantly. But Wrap Bitcoin itself is a strong signal from the market that people want to use their coins for something. There's just not that developer culture or environment on Bitcoin until now.
Great.
From product perspective, we just made our DevNet live, which is fully EVM compatible and currently running on a Bitcoin Signet. So you can check it out if you're an EVM developer. It is citrea.xyz that you can visit. For testnet, it's also planned very soon in this next 3-4 months. And from a take off the market, I think next year, if we will be here in ETCC on L2con, there will be only like 2-3 sidechains and 2-3 rollups. And the rest of the other projects will simply be dead or like gone, so they won't be even live. I think it's kind of like hype, and the market now reached to a point where there's no need to develop any other solution that can differentiate in any other way, because there's no application, that there's no chain that's live and proved that there's some users. So I think next year will be tough for most of the projects that's essentially going to leave the project and move towards something else, I believe.
Product updates. I think the biggest thing for Bitcoin ecosystem this year, there's like 2 main narratives. One is, native assets, ordinals, runes, and then the other thing is, create yield for Bitcoin. That's what pStake is doing, Babylon is doing. I do think, coming 3 months, Merlin chain would have our POS mechanism live, so you'll be able to, have the stake BTC into it and capture the transactions fee from it. Right now, Merlin chain is still very active, so probably might outdo the Babylon yield if they, remove the hard cap somehow. So that's that on the product side. Hot take. I do think like the yield situation on Bitcoin is a bit overhyped. If you see the numbers, like Cosmos isn't. I mean, if there's any Cosmos believers here, like sorry for that, but like Cosmos isn't doing that great in terms of like transactions or activities on chain. So if Babylon supports that chain, captures part of that value, that means it's taking a portion of it from like a close to M people, right? Like how much yield would you have? There's so much Bitcoin out there, and you're not expecting like everyone to put into it. So for Merlin chain itself, we already have like 22,000 Bitcoin. If you count it into the Babylon, represent as a Babylon, stake, you would get a number of yield that is, desperately low, that is probably wouldn't even spark any kind of interest. So that's my hot take, after some kind of calculation, and after the market is, not doing that great, they delaying the things. So yeah, that's my take.
So if I understand correctly, what you're saying is although the proof of stake using economic security, borrowing Bitcoin for these other proof of stake networks, while it sounds great for Bitcoiners, it could actually produce kind of a misalignment among the interest of that destination chain that's getting that support.
Right, because one of the base models that Babylon was aiming towards, or let's say that model itself, using a asset to support a B ecosystem, or even like the same ecosystem, in the past cycle, probably not cycle, past 6 months was dominated by EigenLayer and all its supporting, projects. To this day, we still haven't seen, a good success case of the AVS method, the model working out. And so it's basically the chain itself, let's say the AVS chain, they're working for all the EigenLayer people that staked into it. And then these two people are like, they're not like, so you're actually selling your project to working your project for a group of people that you don't know and doesn't really benefit you back in some way. And so Babylon is in a similar situation. I feel like that it's hard to prove that what it would, like what kind of yield would it be, what kind of chains would actually choose Babylon to be, to become their validator set in some sort. And so that'll be, I think that'll be the issue. Like everything is modular right now. So once you are big enough, there probably are ways to swap it out, swap the validator set out, and have that value back to yourself, back to the team, and fuel the team to do something even better, and not have that Babylon. So like the yield thing, I think is a concern, is a potential concern. I'll have him, he's a big believer. Have him to add on some of the comments if he wants to.
So what you're saying is if Michael Saylor decides to stake 2,000 Bitcoin into Cosmos, the APY will not be very attractive.
It wouldn't be, right?
Right.
Right. He can just put it somewhere else and find a bank, to lend it out, take the loan out, right? Right. It can still work for them.
Cool.
I think the panel just got interesting right at the end. But two very interesting takes, one by Zack, which was, what the market says, you have to listen to it. I don't think the market says EVM is a winner, by the way. I think if we've seen anything this year, it's that SVM and Solana has proven that, there is no winner yet. There's no winner yet. There's still some time to find a winner. I think this is a long-term play. You don't find winners in 10 years. It's a very nascent industry. It's going to play on for a long time, and we're going to see who wins. But I don't think there's any winners yet. In terms of what Sunny said, I kind of agree with him, right? Like, it's not that the yields are going to be insanely high. Again, let's be honest. Unless the market does well, unless these other assets that are being secured, like the Cosmos Hub, if the Cosmos Hub turns out to, Atom goes to zero, what is the yield? It's zero. You have the AVSs, they have to actually do well. So the difference between Babylon and EigenLayer is big because EigenLayer built something where there was zero demand. There's $20 billion worth of supply, but what is the demand? There is no AVS that exists today. What Babylon built is for something that, there's demand for it because Cosmos chains actually struggle with economic security. I've personally felt that, when we go out, we're running a chain, when we go out to get protocol-owned liquidity from the Cosmos Hub, from DYDX for liquid staking of DYDX, there were arguments against, oh, your chain is not secure because the market cap of the chain is lower. If we put on 100 mil worth of TVL on your chain and the chain's valuation is 60 mil, 80 mil, somebody could attack the chain and pull out all those. Now, whether that can happen realistically is a very different thing. Theoretically, is that a valid point? Absolutely. So there's clear demand for on the Babylon side because they're building for a market that exists. Now, how much will the yields be? It's obviously up in the air. Atom market cap, let's say, is $3 billion. Inflation is about 10%. That's $300 million worth of tokens coming into supply. If Cosmos Hub decides to share just 10% of that yield, let's say 10% is pretty big, but is also realistic. That's $30 million worth of incentives going to BTC stakers. If there's $1 billion worth of Bitcoin stake, that's 3%. You can do the math. So that's just from one chain. Cosmos market cap goes up, the yield becomes more and more. Altcoins tend to perform better than Bitcoin, historically speaking. This cycle has been very different. So you add 5 more chains like that, the yield can be, at $1 billion TVL, the yield can be 7-8%. I'm not the one who's saying that's going to be the case. I'm just, putting forward the bull case here. So for me, I don't have many hot takes. I think the easier thing for me to understand is, I think there's a clear demand for this, especially with what Babylon is building, BTC staking. BTC has 0 yield. You'd much rather get 2% than get 0. That's what I would think so, and especially if it's trustless. I don't have to leave. I don't have to send my Bitcoin to somebody else. To a bank who's gonna probably go bust like FTX someday. They're gonna take my money with it and send me my monies back like 2 years later, 5 years later. It's much better that I just trustlessly stake my BTC, hopefully get 2% out of it, 5% out of it. That's beautiful. So yeah, that's it. And maybe I'll end up here. Roadmap-wise, so we're going to launch our product by the end of this month, so the V1, where we accept BTC deposits and stake it via Babylon, goes live this month. After that, it'll be a mainnet testing phase for us. Babylon will have very small deposit caps. Right after that, Babylon increases its caps. We start issuing the YBTC token, take it to multiple chains, and do our thing. Make Bitcoin yield generating and make it accessible for everyone.
I'm going to pull the hot take out of you. Bitcoin to 100K by this end of this year. Yes or no?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say no either. Yeah, on the roadmap, we're mainnets already, and we support BTC, Ethereum, and BSC. And right now, we are putting a strong focus on integrating new chains. And so in the coming month, we are working on integrating Solana Base and the IBC protocol as a whole, so connecting to the entire Cosmos ecosystem at the same time. Yeah, that's the main focus we're working on right now.
Hot take?
Yeah, no, nothing in particular.
Okay, thank you guys for attending and staying. I know you have a lot of interesting panels and workshops and side events to attend, so we appreciate you coming in and listening to our fine guests here and projects. So thank you guys. Give a round of applause to our speakers.